Carlow. Minister, Budget 2017 is obviously by necessity a political budget. It includes diverse political priorities, from pensioners to parents and from educators to entrepreneurs. But it's also true to say that Budget 2017 lacks coherence and it lacks ambition for the country. That said, I am very pleased to see such prominence given to tax avoidance by the vulture funds, and a very clear statement from the Minister that this is going to be shut down. Some have expressed concerns that shutting down tax avoidance by the vulture funds could harm Ireland's funds industry. It will not. Rather, it will help protect Ireland's reputation as a transparent, low-tax economy, and that doesn't hurt the funds industry, that helps the funds industry. We need to be clear that what we're doing here is shutting down tax avoidance on a massive scale by a tiny number of companies. Companies that are avoiding taxes on profits generated in the domestic economy, profits that they should be paying their taxes on. Now, tolerating this sort of tax avoidance and tolerating a lack of transparency that we see in structures like qualified investment funds and ICAVs does two things. First, it deprives the state of much-needed income. And secondly, it gives ammunition to anyone from abroad who wants to attack Ireland's corporation tax regime. So Minister Noonan's comments earlier that the vulture funds are using Section 110s in ways that they were never intended to be used is welcome. What's worrying is the figure in the budget for the projected taxes that this will bring in. The budget document estimates that shutting down tax avoidance by the vulture funds is likely to generate €50 million in additional taxes next year. Now, anyone who looks at the accounts knows that shutting it down is actually likely to bring in well in excess, not of 50 million, but of 500 million. So 50 million isn't even in the same order of magnitude. To put it into context, these firms are managing about €40 billion in property assets in this country, which means they're bringing in taxable profits of between €2 and €4 billion. Now, if you tax between €2 and €4 billion at 12.5% corporation tax, and then an additional 20% in dividend withholding tax, you get a figure close to €1 billion. If the 50 million figure turned out to be true, it means we'd be taxing the firms next year not at 30%, which is what the Irish firms pay, but we'd be taxing it somewhere between 3 and 6%. In fact, if you look at Project Eagle alone, you'll see that properly taxing Project Eagle on its own would bring in about 50 million quid. So one of two things is going on here. Either the €50 million is being used as a placeholder while the real figures are worked out, or the €50 million figure is a detailed estimate of what the proposed amendment would do, in which case the proposed amendment isn't likely to do very much. Now, I'm going to continue to engage with Minister Noonan on this, and I know it's going to be before the Budget Oversight Committee. And so for now, I'm willing to accept that the €50 million is a filler. But we need to be absolutely clear. Shutting down tax avoidance by vulture funds will bring in north of 500 million in additional taxes next year. I'm also very pleased to see childcare feature so prominently, and I would like to congratulate Minister Zappone for working so hard to this end. The reality is that childcare costs in this country stop people working. They stop people working their way out of negative equity. They stop people being able to save for a house. They stop people being able to invest in their children's futures. The reality for childcare providers is that many of them are just surviving and are unable to invest in their businesses and in their staff. The situation is so bad in Ireland that we have to see today's measure as a welcome first step, but nothing more than a first step. We must ensure that annual increases to childcare and early years education continue. We must make the sector affordable, we must make it an attractive career opportunity, and we must see increasing quality and educational impact for our children. The budget today contains other welcome measures. The move towards full tax equalisation for the self-employed is welcome. I would have liked to have seen it go the full way today, but it's a welcome move. Funding to help our industry prepare for Brexit is welcome. Funding for additional Gardaí and for special needs education is welcome. And the reintroduction of career guidance counsellors is welcome, although we must note that it's at a very, very limited level. So where does today's budget fall short? First and foremost, it falls short in terms of the fiscal space. We have accepted a fiscal space of €1.3 billion. Now, the reason it's €1.3 billion is because it has been reduced by the European Commission by almost the same, in fact by more than the same amount, by €1.4 billion, because we've missed a target. And the reason we've missed the target is because of a mechanism that we agreed to in 2002 for calculating whether or not our economy was overheating. And when you applied the methodology from 2002, you get an assumption that full employment in Ireland is at 9% unemployment. Now, there isn't a man or a woman in the country who believes that full employment in Ireland has been reached. We all know that full employment in Ireland is reached closer to 4 or 5%. And it turns out that when you put that in, instead of the wrong number of 9%, we hit our target. And when we hit our target, the fiscal space increases from €1.3 billion to €2.7 billion. Now, we shouldn't be accepting this. We've had testimony from the Chief Economist in the Department of Finance to the Budget Oversight Committee that yes, we are using numbers that everybody knows are wrong, but we signed up to them in 2002, so we're legally bound by them. It is inconceivable to me why the government doesn't go to the Commission and say, you know what, according to the wrong numbers, we have missed our target. But according to the right numbers, we've hit our target. So the total amount of budgetary space we need for much needed investment in education, in the community sector, in infrastructure, can be achieved by going back to the Commission and saying, you know what, we're using the right numbers, we're not using the wrong numbers, and we should come back to this House and have another conversation about very badly needed investment. Because what IFAC have told us is that once you factor in inflation, actually the whole fiscal space more or less disappears. It's more or less needed just to stand still. So, as an example, the state pension increased by €5 a week today. That's very welcome. But when you factor in inflation, in terms of real purchasing power, in terms of what pensioners will actually be able to do with the money next year, it hasn't gone up by €5 a week. In real terms, it's gone up by about €1.70. Similarly, job seekers has gone up by €5 a week. But when you look at what you'll actually be able to buy, the food people will be able to buy for themselves and their children, it's not €5 a week, it's about €2.40 a week. And because all of the money is being used just to stand still, those very marginal increases are being funded by decreases in other areas. So let's take child benefit. There's been no increase to child benefit, which means that because of inflation, in real terms, things parents would be able to use the money for to buy for their children, child benefit has actually fallen by €2 a week. Now, there's almost unanimous agreement in this country from economists, from the business sector, from the social sector, from all over the place, that we need more investment. And yet we are allowing ourselves be constrained in that by missing a target, or by accepting that we've missed a target that in fact we've hit. So let's understand that, and let's go back to the Commission and let's make the case. And if the Commission says, I'm sorry, but we're going to force you to use the wrong numbers, tough luck, well then we should have a debate in this House about whether or not we do what Portugal has done, and Spain has done, and France has done, and Germany has done, and everybody else has done with the Commission and said, well sorry, but we're going to do it anyway. And we should debate that and see if that's something that this House would want to achieve. The budget also fails on the taxation side in several ways. The first-time buyers grant is a ridiculous use of public money. It is wasteful, it is inequitable, and it is going to make the situation worse for everybody. House prices are going to increase for everybody. It won't help first-time buyers. It'll help the first few who get to the houses first, but very quickly they'll find that their €20 or their 20,000 is being swallowed up by increase in house prices. The USC shouldn't be cut. It erodes the tax base. The way you put money back in people's pockets is not by eroding the tax base, it's by reducing the costs of living. What did this budget not do? It didn't invest in education in the way it should have. It hasn't addressed the cost of living. It hasn't helped the negative equity generation. It hasn't really helped the housing market. And it hasn't helped areas like the arts in any meaningful way. So I would put it to the Minister that what we need to do is we need to go back to the Commission, we need to increase the fiscal space, and we need to come back to this House and talk about an ambitious plan for the country. Thank you.